And that's it.
Great job. Hiromi called out as the last box in the truck was dumped off at the foot of a ripper and we were finally done.
Yes.
Woo! I cheered, jumping into the air a little. We had done it. Sold our loot. It actually felt like something an adventurer would do after clearing some goblin cave or something. I mean, sure, scavs aren't exactly goblins. Mostly. But it was the feeling it gave. Payday. Malcolm cheered, hand out and flat towards Hiromi, giving her a cheerful look. She scoffed and rolled her eyes. Not here, you gonk. Come on, let's go to Motoko's place and we can split the eddies, she said, ignoring Malcolm's whine for money as she climbed back into my quadra. Wait, why are we meeting at my apartment? Ichi lives with his grandmother. Malcolm has his parents, and we aren't going to my place. Hiromi answers simply. Sounds good to me. I agree. The boys both say with a grin as they jump into the truck and start driving away. Why did everyone just drive off on me? Bullying gonks. I huffed but got in my quadra and started driving home. I hope June wasn't home. So the split is completely even. Each of us gets 25%. I doubt anyone is unhappy with the number? Hiromi asked as she passed us a pretty hefty chunk of change each. My own bank account was grateful, and it was more than I would have made doing 3 gigs for Wakako. This was amazing, Malcolm said as he flopped back onto the floor of my apartment. We were all sitting around the living room table. Ichi and Malcolm both on the floor while Hiromi and I had the couch. Malcolm, that floor isn't super clean. You might not want to lay back like that, I said, unable to not mention the dusty floors. Listen. I still remember how dirty it was when I was doing push-ups, and neither June nor I had really done any cleaning outside of fixing up our messes. Okay, mostly me picking up tech, or guns laying around, but the point still stood. Yeah, it's kinda dusty down here. Ichi cut in, then shaking his head as Malcolm dusted himself off a bit. Either way. Motoko. Hiromi. Malcolm. Thank you. I was really hurting for eddies, and I couldn't have made anything like this much in such a short amount of time. Motoko. You still pay better than any other boss I've worked for. Thanks. I grinned at Ichi's sincerity as he bowed his head a little, but Malcolm spoke first, throwing an arm over his friend's shoulder. Anytime, Chum. I needed some cash too, I got to admit, other than the terror and chance of death, which we already dealt with during the war. The pay is certainly better. When are we doing this again? I blinked. My crew all looked to me, and I realized what they wanted. I mean, I have the computers that the scavs and the Ripper were using. I'll start digging and see if there is any info on another den, I offered with a shy shrug. I'll reach out to my contacts, because I have those now, and see what I can find out. Hiromi offered, putting both of her hands on her hips and flipping her hair a bit as she looked all pleased with herself. She seriously looked like her mom right there. I decided I wasn't going to mention that. Well, I'll call up some of the TC guys I worked with during the war. I'll see what they say. Ichi offered, looking happy to be involved. Oh, fuck all of you. I don't have any cool contacts, Malcolm said as he slumped over the table. Don't worry, Malcolm, not everyone is good at gathering information. Why don't you see if it can get some upgrades? I'll probably do that sometime soon too. Yeah, I can do that. It'll be preem to actually have some real chrome. I mean, mantis blades, you know? We all laughed as he started swinging his arms around as if he was using the blades. We ended up just kind of hanging out, sorta mini celebrating a job well done when June finally came home. Which of course distracted me completely. Gasp, I yelled out as I looked at June, and he rolled his eyes at me. I said I was going to Vix, he said, and it was true. His arms looked mostly real now. Hug, I demand as I jump up and clamber over Hiromi as June sighs but gives in and wraps his now fleshy arms around me. Much better. Did Vic give you a checkup as well? How's the chrome? He did. Better. He did a good job, settled some issues I didn't even know I had. You were right. Don't let it go to your head. He mutters, and I just giggle, happy that Vic took care of him. Looking good, June knee. Hiromi offered with a wink, and June rolled his eyes at her flirtations. Thank you, Hiromi. Good to see you too. Doing something new with the hair? Well, the mohawk wasn't me anymore. She demurred a bit as she ran a hand through her hair. Her hair was growing out everywhere, but she still had the long mohawk laying sideways. It looked good even so. Hiromi was one of those girls that always looked pretty no matter what she did. Archie and Malcolm, right, he said, and the boys nodded at their name. What are all of you doing?
Celebrating.
Malcolm called out, cheering a bit as he raised his drink into the air, and Hiromi reached over to clink Hoken with his. It wasn't alcohol, but we were having fun regardless. Oh, good news on the sales? Yeah. With Hiromi's help we made lots of eddies. I cheered, showing June just how much we had all made. He smiled and patted my head, looking proud of me.
Yes.
A few hours later I was resting on the couch. Everyone had headed out, probably to spend their newly found eddies. June had claimed the TV and was watching some weird-ass future show that I just couldn't understand why he liked it. Part of me wanted to do some more music, but even I wasn't a brat enough to do that while June was in the middle of his show, so instead I grabbed the shard I had downloaded all of the scav data to, and started going through it. I hadn't just stolen the scav's emails, but the computer's history as well. So as I sorted them out I started looking for anything that would lead to more scavs. As I buried myself searching through the data for something I could use, time flowed past me. In the end I came up with nothing. No emails to Charles about who the boss was, or where I could hunt him down. In fact, it was almost as if the scavs had purposefully kept any connecting info to another den off the systems.
Irritating.
Uck. I groaned as I leaned back away from the laptop. That was a good couple of hours wasted. What's wrong? June asked, although he didn't tear his eyes away from the TV. Just went through all the computer records the scavs had at the den, trying to hunt down a lead to find more of them. Not that easy. One thing they are good at is keeping to themselves. They can't ever get enough power in one area to hold territory or anything, but it makes them impossible to remove. Yeah, I grumbled, as I reached over and closed all the files I had been burning through. Instead I closed the laptop and grabbed my ice laptop, plugged in and started burning down the ice instead. At least with this I could make progress. And in fact I made quick progress. My new cyber deck was amazing. The ice was still there. The task was just as hard as always, but I had so much more flexibility. More speed. I really had been needing an upgrade for a while. I was forced to admit to myself as my speed of cracking ice more than doubled, simply because of how much faster my deck was. The next day I was bumming around the apartment again. Mostly mixing up my grind between playing some random song that I remember from before or trying to get my programming all fixed up. I had also checked through the alerts for the scav den. Other than the XP I hadn't paid any attention to what else I had earned. I really should have, because one of the alerts wasn't just an XP notification but an actual level up. Reflex leveled up. Reflex 7. I was in shock. I hadn't even realized such an important stat had leveled. Awesome. Unfortunately, since my blade skill had already been maxed out, I hadn't gotten any blade alerts, but still. Reflex. I could update my handgun skill again. I was so proud of myself I almost ran out of the apartment to go shoot things before remembering that I was taking it easy-ish today. Only minor stuff on my to-do list. I had sent a text to Regina asking for info about the hold-up on the gig, but all she had sent back was that it was taking a bit longer than expected. So I had been sending texts out to people between grinds. Hiromi was back in school. Ichi was free, but he was following through on his idea. Speaking to some of the old-timers he knew about scav hideouts. But it was Nox that I was texting with the most. Turns out he had finally hit the point where he was making more eddies than he had put into the project. That was cool. It was still nothing to what I made on a gig alone, but the BDs were getting around out there. Which reminded me I had a few more BDs for Judy, including the itchy one which I needed to get made to give to Malcolm and Hiromi. Deciding to get out of the house, I got dressed and headed over to Lizzie's. To my relief, as I pulled into the parking lot, Rita was hanging around outside. I parked and hurried over, waving a bit as I approached her, earning a quirk of her lips in return. "Hey Motoko, doing all right?" "Yep." "Hey Rita. I wanted to say thank you," I said when I got close enough to talk quietly with the Mox.
Your advice was really good.
I ended up finding a new relaxing hobby to do in between all my merc work.
So, thanks. Oh, well, I'm glad, she said, looking pleased at my words, her smile turning completely genuine. I'm glad I could help. What have you started doing? I flushed a little at her question, scratching at the ports on the back of my head as I hesitated, but if anyone deserved to know, it was Rita. I started playing music. I picked up a guitar, and I sing a bit, I guess. Just don't tell anyone, I said seriously, and she giggled. Actually giggled at me. Deal. I won't say a word. You any good? Well, I'm getting there, I guess, I offered, dancing back and forth a little on my feet, which seemed to make Rita even more amused. Then you'll have to play something for me sometime. But no rush. You here to see Judy? She asked, and I nodded, reminded of what I needed to do. Yeah, I have some BDs to drop off. More gigs? I looked around a bit to make sure no one was listening in. My chums and I hit a scav den a few days ago, cleared the whole place out too. Rita scowled at hearing about the scavs but then smirked at the rest. Good. Fucking scum suckers. You all alright? Oh yeah, it was easy, only 10 of the guys. I took them all out without them even realizing. Easy. I waved off the concern, as if I was in danger from a couple of scavs. She looked me over for a while before nodding. Well, it's good to hear there are a few less of them in the city. She reached out and patted my shoulder, looking proud. Too many people being proud of me. We chatted for a few more minutes about Rita dealing with gonks that needed to be thrown out of the club before I headed inside to find Judy. Judy. I called out as I entered, making sure to make noise long before I walked into her lair. I didn't want to startle her again. Huh? Oh hey Motoko, how are you? She asked as she looked away from the computer she had been staring at as I entered. As always, she looked like she lived down here, with her desktop covered in cans piling up. Not too bad. I have some BDs to drop off, and I wondered if I could ask for a favor about a small BD edit. What did you mean? She had turned around from her computer, giving me her complete attention. I couldn't help but smirk a bit at the thought of what she was going to see. Okay, so I have this BD I made about a prank I pulled on a friend. Walking out of Lizzie's a few hours later, I was still giggling at the BD in my pocket, even if my wallet was lighter. Judy was more than willing to do a BD edit for like a minute long virtue, but it wasn't free. I shrugged. It was good enough. Now I could torment Itchy. Hey Mr. Stud. That's never going to get old, I muttered to myself as I drove home, still giggling. Judy had also been given the scav den virtue to fix up and hand to Nox. Well, that little job was done. Considering how close I was, I considered heading over to Iber Tower and talking to Regina, but in the end she would contact me with a gig. If she didn't want to give me gigs, it wasn't a problem for me. I wasn't hurting Freddy's. No, instead I headed towards my favorite Ripper. After everything, Vic had gone through the chrome we had dropped off and found a few pieces that I had put away. I don't think I was ready for all of it, but there was still a few little updates I wanted to chip in. I stopped in to see Misty, of course. We had a fun conversation about some article she was reading in her magazine about the net and souls. But then I went down to Vic. Oh? Finally ready for those upgrades, huh? Yeah, but first, I demanded as I stomped up and pulled Vic into a big hug. Thanks for helping my brother, I told him, and he looked a little flustered as he patted me on the shoulder. You know, there isn't any reason to thank me. I didn't do anything most other Rippers couldn't do. It was special to me, I told him, simply ignoring his attempts to break free until I was satisfied my thankfulness was understood. Then when I broke away, I moved over to his Ripper chair and settled in. Let's do this. The Smart Link system took only a few moments to install. My Condor arms were designed to accept one after all. But the X-Disc was a bit more of a job. Vic put me out as he was dealing with my neural link, but I woke up feeling perfectly fine. Just with a new piece of metal in my head that gave me some more am for my net deck. Is it working? I couldn't help but ask, as I didn't feel any different, and Vic just chuckled. You won't notice much yourself, it mostly boosts your net deck. Just keep an eye on your RAM usage while you're out and you should notice a difference. How's the head? Any headache? The neck? Sometimes the headache shows as a stiff neck.
he suddenly asked as he rolled over with the inhaler and prompted me to take a hit. No? I feel fine. Nothing seems wrong, I said, checking my head and neck. Usually you'd have something after an install like that. Noticed you weren't having a problem with your CyberDeck install last time either. I don't expect the smart link to cause any problem, but a new neuralware is usually a quick road to a headache for a few days even with my care. Vic muttered as he started running scanners over my head and seemed to be checking me out. I quickly pulled up my status page while he worked. First thing I noticed quickly was that my cyberization number had gone up for intelligence. Intelligence 7, 11, due to cyberization, maximum value has increased by 4. It used to only be increased by 2. So I guess the X-Disk made a difference. But also, Arasaka Smart Link System. Adaptation Smart Link 00. Arasaka X-Disk Adaptation X-Disk 00. Neither of the two cyberware had an adaptation cost? I could only hum to myself as Vic worked on checking me out, but I felt fine. Better than fine really. Eventually, after taking all the scans, like literally all of them, Vic let me go. He was relieved that he wasn't finding anything, but also sorta grumpy that he wasn't finding what he expected. So I left him to his grumpiness, but only after thanking him, and handing over some money for the work. Then I went home again. I was feeling the need to grind some more. Plus I really wanted to level my programming so I could make my music box idea work. Even if it was stupid and just for my music hobby, it would be really cool if it worked. No. When it worked. I hummed along to the radio as I drove home. So I was taking a break from programming ping. Instead I had pulled out my toy. I mean my very important directional microphone. That was for super important gig work. And not a toy. But I was trying to program the damn thing. All I was trying to do was get it smart enough to be able to focus the audio on what I wanted to hear, and filter out any background noise. Programming is hard though. I wasn't making much progress, at least not efficient progress. Everything I typed out was twigging my debug knowledge, telling me it was going to be a mess to work with. But that didn't really matter. I just needed to keep grinding and eventually programming skill level up. That would happen. Programming 4. I enjoyed the surge of knowledge as I nodded along, considering what had just been dumped in my head. Then I took the program for the mic I had been working on and deleted almost all of it. Yep. It was dog shit. Then I started again, using the best bits of the last build. I would get this to work. Will never fade away. I crooned as I had taken a break from my programming to strum my guitar and sing. I wasn't so much stuck on the programming as just needing to let my mind do something else for a while. So many numbers. Plus with my 2 perks filling in for me, I could basically shut down my brain and play a song and not really have to think about it. Letting my brain cool down from the math overload. 100 Rockaboy XP gained. The message popped in after I finished the song. I couldn't help but smile because Rockaboy leveled up super fast. Even though I wasn't getting alerts after every song, or even every other song, it didn't really matter. I played the songs simply enjoying the music and the alerts came in. Plus it helped that I kept adding more and more to my play. First it was just strumming and singing badly along, then my instrumental cleaned up, and now I have Siren Song. My voice was so much better, so I was actually singing smoothly. It was fun now. I didn't feel like a grind anymore. When I played it really was just because I wanted to hear the song. The only thing that annoyed me was that I only had a guitar. I still needed to get my music box programmed so I could start doing the rest of the songs too. I sighed as I put the guitar down. Back to work. The next day, long after June had left for work again, I was standing on the couch and screaming at the top of my lungs while I rocked out. I was just a little irritated at the programming not coming together. But at least I had a nice outlet. The squeal of my guitar echoed around the apartment as I finished the song and flopped onto the couch to catch my breath. I needed, I don't know, more things to tweak, more programming to grind with. My microphone work had helped, but it wasn't enough. I either needed to get an example of someone already having programmed a directional mic, or I needed to level up a lot more. It was irritating. even if I was still getting skill alerts while failing. I put the guitar on the stand and stood up. The music helped me break how stuck I was, so now I had an idea. It was time to go talk to Yoko. Suiting up in my normal outfit, and a quick drive later, I walked into the Dewdrop Inn to see Yoko as always at the counter. Yoko. I just got an upgrade to my deck, I need some quick hacks to fill it up. What you got? I asked as I leaned over the counter and she nodded. Here's my selection, she offered, pulling out a data pad, and handing it over, and there listed out were all of the programs she had. In this case she was actually selling them for eddies, but I noticed there was a second tab for better hacks that were only tradable with knowledge. Luckily I had the eddies, so I quickly started browsing. Most of it was just stuff from the game I recognized, although there were some different hacks. Some were meant only for netrunning, like Ice Shield, which could create a temporary barrier against threats, hopefully giving you some time to jack out, or escape in the net. Or Distract, which created, well, junk data demons that would spread out through a system and try to interfere with everything, filling files with bad data. But I wasn't looking for netrunning code, mostly because I had yet to really dip my feet into netrunning. It wasn't that I was nervous or anything, I just didn't really need it. Most netrunners couldn't just infiltrate a building and breach into their network directly, bypassing any real worry about black ice killing them or anything. I'll take a weapon glitch, and a reboot optics, I said confidently. Both were pretty base-level programs, but I could fiddle with them, and more importantly, they could both be used in combat when I screwed up and got spotted. Being able to jam some gonks' guns, or blind them, would be an amazing help. I paid quickly and was already installing the programs in my deck as I walked out. Now I had some new programs to play with and level up. I decided to spend the rest of the day playing around with my new quick hacks, but I still had my chums messaging and chatting with me throughout the day. Hiromi was mostly complaining about school, but she had put out some feelers to her new contacts about any scav info. Ichi hadn't found much from the old TC guys, but they had apparently liked his gumption to clean up the scavs, and Ichi told me that they would start asking around. Malcolm was just enjoying having some eddies, and his parents were super happy with him coming home with thousands of eddies for a job. After they fussed and worried he had done something the NCPD would arrest him for anyways. Well, that and showing off his new mantis blades. Seriously, he kept sending pictures of him posing with them every half hour. It was funny but a little embarrassing. But I was once more distracted happily with a new program to work on. I started with weapon glitch, mostly because being able to mess with someone's weapon in a fight was an automatic I win button. And I wanted to make sure I knew how to use it, and defend against it if needed. So I dug into the code, and instantly started figuring out how the program works, and how badly coded it was. Another mess of programming. Although in this case I noticed something interesting. It was purposefully coded badly. The idea was so weird it took me hours of double-checking before I was convinced. Unlike Ping, which was a rather simple program, and was just an extension of net infrastructure, Weapon Glitch had obviously been designed by someone really smart to specifically do what it said. But if I used my old metaphor for programming being the design of weapons, someone had created a magical super sword for themselves, and then started making some lesser copies to sell around. The only reason I noticed it is because of all the experience noticing bad code thanks to debug. There were sections of really smooth code in the program. Stuff that I didn't have a chance of copying myself, but then they would be hampered with really horribly written code that forced memory leaks, or loops in the process. So while I doubted I could reach the equals quality yet, I definitely could fix some of this nonsense. The fact the program used so much RAM to activate could easily be lowered with a few fixes. And that is when I realized what the original must have looked like. A program that could be used multiple times in a row to completely disable the weapons of an entire group, instead of using a ton of RAM to disable a single weapon. Yeah, I wanted me one of those. But the thought of walking into a group of gonks and just wiping their ability to shoot at me in a glance was pretty cool. So I settled in to get to work. And very quickly I started getting XP alerts. A new program and problems to fix. Yeah, that was all working towards a grind. I was a chunk through the next level to programming when I took another break when June came home seemingly in a rush. barging in having obviously been moving fast. "Motoko, get dressed," he said suddenly as he stood by the door, and I looked away from the laptop screen I had been staring at for the last half dozen hours. "Eh? What's up, June?" "There's a party. You're invited. Come on," he said, simply nodding his head towards my room as he rushed right past it into his own room, and I could hear him grabbing some junk. "Party?" I called out curiously, wondering what June was on about. "It's a big party to commemorate the end of the war. 6th Street agreed to the ceasefire completely. So it's over. Kamikaze are invited. And Fujimura-sama asked me to invite you as well." He offered, and I had to blink a bit at that. Did I want to go to a TC party? No. Not really. Did I care if Fujimura invited me? No. Not really. June must have seen the look on my face because he smiled. He had something planned for sure. "There will be food. Good food. Just come, you don't have to do anything. Just enjoy the food. Even if you don't want to be with the Tiger Claws anymore, but you are still one of us." I blinked. "June, you sneaky bastard. You were trying to improve my opinion of the TC by having me eat their food." "I mean, it was sneaky enough to work, but I doubt it will change my opinion of the gang." "Fine, but only because free food sounds kinda preem," I agreed, and June smiled a little as he nodded, reaching over and fluffing my hair, which, considering he had on real skin, actually felt kinda nice. Oni-chan head pats were pretty good. "Let me get cleaned up," I told him, waving his hand away. I couldn't just let him think I liked it when he patted my head after all. I would have to mess with him soon to make sure he understood. But I got dressed in my normal clothes and followed June out into the night. What could go wrong? And this is my sister Motoko. June introduced me to another high-up TC guy. Seriously, I had seen so many Yakuza wannabes, they were all flowing together into one super Yakuza. But none of that mattered. Suoshi. Okay, coming to the party was a good idea. I stuffed another synth sushi into my mouth despite June trying to introduce me to someone. Because fuck them. But sushi tasted good. The Yakuza guy nodded to me but turned back to focus on June. No one that June had mentioned to me had even taken a second look at me so far, which was good. Because I was far more interested in the snack bar. Which is a way to say I was basically just camping it, forcing June to stand awkwardly next to me as I snacked. He didn't have to. I told him he could go hang out in the party, but he was acting kinda skittish. Apparently all of these Yakuza types were important and powerful or whatever. I didn't care. Free sushi. But it wasn't just TC guys hanging around. There was a detachment of 6th Street soldiers hanging around as they chatted with the TC leaders. This was a party to celebrate an end to the open conflict between the gangs after all. Open conflict anyways. Of course the gangs would still happily kill each other in the dark and deny responsibility. But overall it was boring. The party was taking place in one of the skyscrapers in Japantown. Apparently it acted as a club that the TC owned when it wasn't in use by the gang. Of course tonight was a private event. Kusanagi. Kusanagi. A familiar voice spoke up, interrupting my snack, and June was already offering a bow. Fujimura, to my surprise, looked a bit different. He had definitely lost some chrome. He gave June a nod in return before looking towards me. Dang it, he actually wanted to talk to me, didn't he? I sighed internally as I finished chewing my sushi and swallowed. How's it going? It's a shame the war ended when it did. He suddenly said out of nowhere. If you had been dragged into a few more battles, they wouldn't be ignoring you. They'd be seeking you out for their own benefit like they do your brother, he said, suddenly surprising me as he looked around and took in the people around us. I like it this way. It would be annoying to be bothered by them. I mean, I get to stand here and eat sushi, so it all works for me. I offered with a shrug. He snorted unhappily. You don't have the burn for more. You lack of ambition. Disappointing. Kusanagi, try to drag your sister into her potential. It would be a waste if she simply wallows as she is. Fujimura says, to my surprise. It was a backhanded compliment, but a compliment all the same. What a weird guy. Yes, Fujimura-sama. June agrees, but I know my brother pretty well at this point. He was agreeing just to agree. But Fujimura wasn't entirely done. He turned to me again and gave me a long look over.
Girl. I'm no fool. You may wish to separate from the tiger claws. I've seen many like you, thinking that they don't need the tiger's protection anymore. It won't matter in the end. Someday, you will find yourself in need of friends, and we will still be there. Perhaps then you will remember who truly are on your side. Then he just walked away. I decided to just stuff more sushi in my mouth. Crazy cyber psycho TC leaders talking nonsense at me. I don't feel great, I muttered to June as I walked out of the bathroom. I warned you to stop eating so much sushi. You made yourself sick. He told me without a hint of sympathy as he led me back into the ballroom where the party was taking place. It wasn't my fault. The sushi was so good. But now my stomach was really not happy with me. Okay, it was my fault. I'm adult enough to accept that I literally ate myself sick. Come on, we can leave early and head home. Yeah. Sorry June-ni. I muttered, struggling not to puke. Okay, definitely my fault. Stupid Motoko. Real stupid. But it was so tasty. I shook that thought away, my stupid brain not knowing when enough is enough. June guided me through the party, and apologized to a few of the TC higher-ups as we passed. June covering for me, saying I just wasn't feeling well, and not that I made myself sick by eating too much. Eventually we entered the elevator down to the garage at the same time as another of the big TC guys. Honestly, I could see the neon Yakuza tattoos crawling over his suit, up the back of his neck and across the back of his hands. He spoke to June while his date, a beautiful neon goddess that was definitely a doll, fussed over me. I could literally see the doll chip cyberware starting just behind her ear going down her throat. The gold engravings glinted against her pale skin. It was pretty, if you know the fact it was literally a pseudo-mind control thing didn't make it kinda disgusting. Although I was pretty sure it was the woman in truth and not the programming, as she hummed over my back and even gave me a little back rub as I rested my head against the cool chrome of the back of the elevator. Ugh, too much sushi. Stupid Motoko, acting like a child in overeating. Dumbass. The elevator stopped with a jolt and the four of us walked out. June guided me along as the TC guy and the doll both left arm in arm, an expensive-looking car pulling up for them with a beep. Which is when everything went wrong. I felt it. That sense shooting up my spine. Danger sense. A glint in my periphery. The smell of blood. A noise of a heavy footstep on concrete. Too heavy to be normal. Down. I screamed and kicked out June's knee, so we went tumbling just in time to avoid the barrage of machine gun fire above his head. The TC guy was also lucky. The moment I screamed out, he had moved, jumping into the car with the instincts of a man who had heard screams to move before. And it had saved his life. The poor doll wasn't as lucky. She went down with a cry and the splattering sound of meat. An LMG was pumping rounds towards us, aiming to kill us all. No, I realized thankfully, aiming for his target. The TC leader, who was now hiding inside his car and trying to get it started even though his car was getting hammered with bullets. But June was going to get up soon, and no doubt June and I would be a target the moment we did. Everything went slow. My mind focused. I only had one chance to survive this. June only had one chance to survive this. My mind blazed, my eyes burned. I attacked. It had been a long time since I had done any quick hacking, and never with an offensive program like this. I could barely see the man himself, just his hulking outline as he fired from the shadows of the garage, right next to a car that had an open trunk. The fucker had been in the trunk of a car, probably just sitting and waiting for his target. Smart fucker. But in just a moment I was done. His ice resisted, but it only lasted a few moments before I was in. His LMG suddenly sparking as its electronics shut down, causing a jam in the receiver as it tried to double load a round. Stupid June. He was still holding on to me, not realizing the attack was over. And the moment it took me to try and push him away was too long. Because I had quick hacked him, no way he didn't realize I had been the one to shut down his toy. I looked up just in time to see the attacker just appear in front of us. Fucking Sandovis. I didn't even get a chance to quick draw before he laid into June and I with a kick. No, it wasn't a kick. A kick would just hurt. This was like being struck by a moving vehicle. We were sent flying.
While in the air I had a moment to be happy that June was mostly okay since he was mostly gorged as well, even if he got rocked into the concrete wall beside the elevator. I on the other hand was 90% squishy meat even if I had desperately tried to block the kick with my arms. I went flying down the garage, rolling along the concrete. The fact he had kicked me in the stomach meant I had left a trail of my previous meal all across my path. Gross. I gagged and choked once I landed, blood joining my meal on the concrete. Fuck, that hurt. June was getting back on his feet, looking more pissed off than I had ever seen him. I groaned as I wiggled my toes, confirming my back wasn't broken, just my insides as I forced myself up. Fuck this guy, and fuck this night. The Borg's target was obviously the TC leader who was doing his best to get his car moving to escape this assassination. June attacked him, because of course he did. Despite not having his katana, June was relying on his gorilla arms, slamming a fist into the Borg's side to keep him from reaching into the car to grab the TC guy with his utterly massive hands. Fuck, this guy was as big as Maine. Like anime big. Easily 7+ feet tall, and absolutely beefed out. This wasn't just some random fucker. This was an edge runner level cyberpunk. Fuck. June and I were in the middle of this. But fuck this guy even more for trying to kill us. The noise of the car finally starting changed the battle. The edge runner was distracted. Boya was drawn even as Borg guy punched June back, and then with an almost casual swipe of his arm, he literally knocked the car off its wheels and onto its side. The rear wheels spinning helplessly as it was no longer able to escape. But his attack thankfully opened him up to me. June was out of the way and the fucker was extended. Boya barked, and Edge Runner went from completely ignoring me to focused entirely on me as a massive hole was punched into his back. He shifted and I fired again and again, but to my frustration they all missed. He had activated his Sandy after my shot and literally ducked and dived around the shots. Okay, speedwear was on the list of stuff pissing me off now. I met his glaring red eyes. Although this guy had a face, his optics screamed maelstrom. He raised his arm. Oh. Fuck. I jumped to my feet, ignoring the way my insides seemed to leak at the feeling. I was definitely hurting internally, but that didn't matter. I jumped, just managing to slide between a few cars as the rocket he shot at me exploded into the concrete where I had been standing. I coughed out blood again as I hit the floor, rolling a bit as the shockwave washed over me. I puked up some more blood. Not a good sign. But I wasn't done. I rolled onto my back and started reloading while I was out of sight. Fuck June, don't die you moron. I couldn't help but think as I could hear him yelling and fighting with the Borg. I reloaded in a blur. Despite every movement making my stomach spasm in pain as muscles that had just been tenderized screamed at me, cold blood, and cool nerves meant I wasn't bothered. Kill the Borg. Then make sure I wasn't going to die. Reloaded, I rose up and took aim but winced. June was in the way. The two were wrestling and June was obviously losing. But I couldn't make the shot. I growled, which only hurt me more than anything, and instead ducked back down and started moving, slipping behind the cars. I made it to the stupid TC's car that was still on its side, having been wedged up against the backs of a few of the other cars parked in the garage. But that was perfect for me. I quietly climbed up to the side of the car to get on top of it, which put me right next to the two fighting away, beating on each other. The shot was perfect. His big stupid head was right there. Boya barked once more, echoing through the lot as a massive hole exploded in the Borg's chrome, but not into his head where I had been aiming. He had noticed and raised his shoulder. I had been aiming for his head, so instead of ending the fight all I did was put a big hole in his shoulder. A shoulder that wasn't disabled, as I learned a moment later as he swept his arm at me. I wasn't fast enough to dodge. The backhand hit and I blanked out for a time. It was only an urge to cough that ended up spitting blood all over my face that made me open my eyes and realize I had passed out at some point. I was smashed atop a car down the way, having hit it so hard I was indented into the roof. The sound of June roaring brought me back. I reached down for my Mac stock pouch, hands actually trembling as I brought it to my lips. The first puff brought me back to awareness, back to my focus. I still hurt. A lot, in fact. But I was alive. I sat up and noticed my boya wasn't in my hand. Fuck, That borged-out fucker had actually hit me so hard I lost my gun. Spotting my boya on the ground right next to where the Borg was beating my brother to death made me stand up knowing that I had to get involved. I popped my neck lightly, as I had the worst crick in my neck, and then it was on. Once again I was out of the fucker's sights. He probably thought I was dead. Hell, June probably thought I was dead too. Which probably explained why he was getting his ass beat so bad. My eyes were open. My thoughts were clear. This Borg needed to die. June needed help right now. I attacked again. This time reboot optics slammed into his system. The ice just as ineffective as it was before. Suddenly his eyes shut down mid-fight, and for just a moment June had a chance. But June wasn't alone. I started running, moving as silently as I could as I charged in. Speedwear was only effective if you could move. So I just had to disable that first. My knife was yanked out of its sheath, and I even grabbed one of the throwing knives I had taken from the raffin. Boya was on the ground, and that was my only chance to really finish this. So I needed it. Just as I reached the Borg's back I threw myself into a slide. Both knives held out and slammed into the back of the fucker's knees. Both skittered and skipped, but even subdermal armor couldn't protect the joints perfectly. The throwing knife skittered off but cut into the flesh before deflecting, but my main knife managed to slip into a soft patch and pierce through into the internals. Bitch. The Borg roared a bit, but not in pain. Just anger. Obviously his pain editor was active. June though was there with me. He reached out and grabbed the arm that had been aiming towards my general direction a moment before and started retaliating. The Borg tried to kick me once his arm was held back, but I was already tumbling forward dodging his weak blow and grabbing the boya and then while on my back aimed upwards. I didn't hesitate and while the fucker obviously activated his speedwear, trying to fight back against us both. But blind, stuck between June and I, and with a knee injury he couldn't dodge. Boya hammered my shoulders into the concrete as I fired all 3 rounds punching upwards into him. White Borg blood poured out of him onto me. This fucker was stronger than June, he was bigger than June. But he now had 3 more bullet holes tearing up his insides. June was on him, pounding his fists into the fucker's chest. Each time the Borg started trying to retaliate, June would slam a fist into the damaged sections of chrome. His first squirming and searching, digging into the chrome and ripping out whatever he could grab. It wasn't completely effective. Even injured. Even 2-on-1, even with June hammering away, the Borg just wasn't stopping. I didn't have another reload for the boya. I didn't have my thermal katana. I didn't have anything that could really scratch this guy on me. But that didn't mean I was going to let June have all the fun. I drew my Lexington, and started taking patshots, trying to shoot into the holes that my boya had already opened up. It was hard with June there, but a few went in and each time it caused the Borg to jerk as something internal took a bullet. The Borg stepped back. Probably the first time he had been forced to retreat since the fight started, showing just how fucking scary this bastard was. I stood up and kept with June, dodging around June and popping off rounds whenever I could. As the two of us double-teamed the Borg, pushing him back. Teamwork. It was surprisingly effective. The guy's fucked up leg meant that even when he activated his speedwear he couldn't quite catch us, although it did make his arms move incredibly fast, and the one time I barely got out of reach I could feel the wind blow past my face like a truck had just raced by at 100 miles an hour. But it wasn't enough. I could see it in his face as he realized he had fucked up. Blind and hamstrung, he couldn't escape. That he was too slow now to stop us from slowly tearing him apart. If the fucker was a moose, June and I were wolves pulling him apart piece by piece. Sure, he could kill us with a hit, but he was slow, weak. In the end, as much as I wanted it, June took the kill. Instead of dodging a blow, June grabbed the Borg's hand before he could pull it back and tugged, unbalancing the Borg, giving him time to leap at him. Climbing up the fucker, June wrapped his arms around the Borg's neck and started pulling. Sure, the Borg reached up to try and stop him, but he was having some issues because that left his stomach open to me. I quickly reloaded another magazine into my Lexington and pushed the gun straight into his open guts. Lexington were automatic pistols. I unloaded, shifting the angle so bullets would be bouncing all around in the fucker's chest. His arms went limp and June roared as he tugged. The Borg's head popped free with a nasty crunch, sending June falling off and onto his back, and then the Borg's body crumpling as its will left it. As its ghost died. The garage was silent after that. Except for June and I's heavy breathing. He slowly sat up and I winced as he looked like he just finished a 10-round boxing match. His face was already puffing up and more purple than anything else. "You look like shit." I couldn't help but inform him as I settled down on the ground. My legs felt weak, and my everything hurt. "Uck you," he said slurring, but he was alright if he had the energy to bring up his middle finger to flip me off. "What the fuck?" I couldn't help but ask, questioning the world because that was some serious shit. I had fought Borgs before. Hell, I had even fought cyberpsychos. But that guy was a walking tank. A monster that I wasn't sure I would be able to kill even from the shadows. Hell, I had shot him multiple times with my boya, and he hadn't gone down. "You gonna live?" I asked June as he just flopped down on the ground and hadn't gotten up. Instead of saying anything, he threw up a thumbs up and just laid there. "Fair." That was totally fair. I glanced over at my alerts for the fight. I didn't get the XP. Fucking June kill stealing. Nah, fuck it. I'm too tired to care. Quick hack leveled up. Level 4. And I had gotten a body level. Body 7. I guess fighting some edge runner Borg had some advantages. The sound of men rushing up jerked me back to awareness. Had I just passed out again? I looked up to see an army of the TC guys from upstairs, all of them the guards that had been around the room rushing out of the elevator and the stairs. Immediately they started checking around, and even checking on the TC boss in the car. Turns out he was alive. Yay. The poor doll wasn't though. I noticed one of the guards checking and after a brief moment he simply stood up and walked away. Yeah, the big holes in her chest from the Edge Runner's LMG would make living difficult. Fuck, that sucks. I didn't even know her name. But she had been nice. Kusanagi. I blinked looking up towards Fujimura of all people who was now looming over me. "Hey. We got him," I mentioned nodding my head towards Headless Borg guy. "I see that. You'll live?" "Yeah. My stomach is on the wrong side of my spine, but I'll live," I tell him, and to my surprise I get an actual huff of a laugh out of the cyber psycho. "What the fuck?" A moment later a big coat was put over my shoulders, and Fujimura walked over to June to check on him too. Huh? Did he go get counseling as well as dechroming or something? Whatever, this whole fucking night was a disaster. Do you think they'd let me get some of the sushi upstairs? My stomach was empty now. I blinked at what I had just thought, shaking my head with a long sigh that hurt my insides. "Martoko, you dumbass. You won't be able to eat it right now anyways. Better ask for a to-go box."